so I think that would work. I'm also aware of another, something brewing for another campground. I don't know how many it is, but I do think, yes, that would count.
Odd situation, what if you're a tax exempt organization like a church? You get tax credits?
We have talked about that several times, and we have honestly not found a great answer. Can I come back to that? Okay, so his question was, what if you're a tax exempt organization? Essentially, a church is
Church camp.
church camp, church, nonprofit around town here. How do you get the tax credits? How do you do a project and benefit? And I do not have a good solution for it. We've been approached about that several times, and we really just haven't come up with anything. Let me come back to that because there will, I think, another question or two.
Aren't there grants that nonprofits can get that would basically offset the, such that you wouldn't be paying taxes anyway as a nonprofit, such that but now you're eligible for grants that on a bill to commercial entities?
Maybe. To be honest with you, I do not know, of nonprofits. I know that the USDA has a program out there right now, but I'm not sure if it's nonprofits are eligible. They're not.
It's a big grant. I don't think
It's no different between so.
I can talk more about that.
Yeah. Bottom point there, cannot claim the Section 179 deduction in the first year. So if you folks are all in the commercial world, you're all thinking, okay, I go buy an asset, I get to write it off, Section 179, deduct it all in the first year. Buy a $40,000 pickup, I get to deduct it all in the first year with the Section 179 deduction. That's in fact what we were all waiting for at the end of the year with the tax extender bill. Just so you know, when you do a commercial solar project, you are not eligible to take that Section 179 deduction all in that first year. If you do, it kicks you out of getting the tax credit. So it kind of defeats your purpose. Now, as I was typing this, a solar project is eligible for 50% bonus depreciation. Now, I didn't write that down there specifically because we don't have that in 15, correct? Fair enough.
Yeah,
We don't have
We
bonus.
don't know if going forward, right?
Right, they're gonna have to pass another tax extender bill to know if we have bonus depreciation. So it would be eligible for some rapid depreciation that way, but right now they're gonna have to change the law. Okay. Iowa, so Iowa has probably, well, I haven't worked with any other state that has an incentive program, other than maybe there's a few really small credits. Iowa solar incentive, commercial project, you get 60% of the federal energy credit, limited to $20,000. That Iowa credit carry forward is for 10 years. That bottom bullet, you get a separate credit for each separate and distinct installation. So let me expand on that a little bit. First of all, the federal credit is unlimited. With $400,000 worth of solar in service, you get 30% of the $400,000 for federal purposes. Iowa get a credit for each separate and distinct installation. Best way I can describe that is if I have 5 different hog barns and I put a $100,000 solar project on each barn, I get a $20,000 credit for each installation. That's 5 installations. So that's a really huge benefit to how that works.
That's bumped up from last year.
Yes.
Previous was 3,000.
Yeah.
Residential was 50% of 3,000.
Yep. 2013 numbers, yes, that 5,000 was 3 and the 20,000 was 15. Legislature passed a law in May or June that increased that. what we're gonna see as taxpayers, I think there is a process that you can go back and amend applications. Let me, so with this Iowa, you've got to apply to receive that credit. Iowa has a $4.5 million cap per year on a first come, first served basis. Now there is of that $4.5 million, $1 million of that's reserved for residential only. 2014, the cap was met, and I'm not sure how far into the 15 cap they are, but you got to figure they are. I just looked at the website this morning, and the last update was January 8th. I'll find out as of Monday too, but I know my phone, I know the lady that administers the Iowa program, so we can talk several times. That's the website address. If you would just the Iowa Department of Revenue and search on solar, you'll come. They've got a pretty good page. Leads you to the applications. Let me back up and talk about this application. So if you did a project early in 14, applied and got the credit at the 13 limits, at 3,000 or 15, there's an amended application process you can go back through to bump up to the new limits after the legislature.
What is that retroactive to in terms of installation?
January 1,
January 1 of 14.
14.
So if you had it installed before January 1, you're stuck with 3,000. You can't retroactively go back.
Correct. It's all based on your install, yes.
So if it's filled in 14, and you build it, and you apply for it in 14, does that carry over into 15?
Yes,
You're first on the list?
You were first on the list for 15. You will get
Okay.
issued 15 credit, yes. I just talked to a coworker, and we've got a 13 project, we think, that nobody did anything with. And he has talked to the lady's name is Jennifer Tilkus that administers this in the state of Iowa. He's talked to her. We're sending in an application, and they will get 15 credit for that 13 project.
Okay.
That's the whole concern that those dollars are go away from a standpoint. I mean, let's say I know, but let's say you plan on a project and 14, don't get it, the dollars are gone and then you hope to do 15.
Well, trying to be apolitical, I would say that you're probably fairly safe until the end of 16 when the federal credit expires. But I can't guarantee anything. We're waiting right now for Iowa to match up with this extended tax bill that just happened in December, and that's got our office kind of working. So.
Kelly, maybe that's worth just emphasizing that the 30% federal tax credit expires, it drops from 30% to 10% after December 31, 2016. So this is really an important window. If you are thinking about pulling the trigger on solar, this is a good time to do it.
So what about the Iowa tax credit? How is it written? I mean, you've got it said here that it will be 60% of the federal tax credit. Is it set to stop at 2016, or will it continue and be possibly 60% of that 10% tax credit, or that new reduced federal tax credit?
I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you, how that's written.
Okay.
They've expanded it, I would say, their observation is that Iowa's on board, meaning, actually up until 12, 13, so 14. 13 and before, banks could not claim the Iowa solar credit. Interesting enough. 14, it was inserted in the law that they could. So I guess I would have to say they appear to be on board, whether that stays or not. I'm fairly confident it'll stick around until the end of 16, but. All right, just a couple of brief examples. I'll skip the residential for you. Business project, $75,000 project. Business, you're going to get a $22,500 credit, Iowa credit of $13,500. Your depreciable basis, you get to depreciate $63,750 of that project over 5 years, and it's probably front loaded over 5. So 1, 2, and 3 are more than 4, 5, and 6.
So the Iowa credit does not come off.
It's not. my little warning to all of you. This stuff's very specific to your tax return. Get to your tax preparer, talk about how it's gonna work. You know, I would be happy to do it, but if you're not a tax client of ours, I'm gonna wanna see 2 or 3 years worth of tax returns before I'll even kinda, hey, this is how some of those benefits might pencil through. It's just, it's so specific. You know, think about this, retired couple, you know, $50,000 worth of income, they might not be paying any tax. So the tax benefits might do them nothing. So anyway, all right. Let me back up, talk about the nonprofit and the church thing, and what we have not seen or not been able to do. So in the nonprofit world, yeah, you don't pay any tax. Let's say you're a nonprofit or a church, you go find someone that's willing to invest in those solar panels and put them on your roof, and then they would take the tax credits. So here's the problem you run into when you put those. If I buy solar panels, put them on the church's roof, and then the church is going to lease those panels from me. My lease, so I have lease income. Take the depreciation on the solar panels. Everything that we have, the mathematics of this, pretty much work out that for that first, 5 years, 6 years, you've got a loss. I would have a loss leasing solar panels to a church or a nonprofit. If I have a loss, I'm not paying any tax. Tax credits don't do me any good. They just suspend out there now. There are some situations, again, back to get your tax return. But there are some situations where, yes, you might have some income that would come in and offset that loss. But that's what we've seen and it's not been able to, the hurdle that we've not been able to get across with the church or a nonprofit.
Basically, could also go on, if that entity was paying electric bill and now they're not, they could be paying at least to the person that's leasing those panels, so they basically have locked in the price of their electricity at least.
They have
Let's
locked,
say a 5-year, can you agree to, what?
Well, the guy that's put it up there doesn't have any taxes,
yeah,
because it's a loss.
yes.
But he would have an income from
You would have
revenue
an,
off of it. He's got other, and he's got different things going on.
yeah, you gotta have several things going on for that to work. I mean, those are, but for the most part, we have just not been able to make that situation work. And there's even the loss thing, but then you start to.
So there's a tax advantage to the person that's taking the tax credit. In other words, a church has to come into, get a person or organization to buy, to enter into an agreement where they buy and then we lease it from them, right? And they could quote, save money on their taxes or come out profiting,
Maybe.
well, donations. Come out to that, Terry?
No. In order to depreciate it, you gotta say that you're in business. So you gotta have this whole, being in business to take the depreciation.
Let me ask you this option, there's two options to think about here. One is maybe, so first question is, what if I wanted to donate a system to a church? Could I take the federal and state tax credits and then donate the system to the church and receive the tax benefit of that, depending on my tax bracket of making a charitable gift? Can I do that, or do those panels have to physically be installed on my premises for me to claim those federal and state tax credits? See what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
And the answer is, for you to claim the credits, yes, they do have to be on your, now, on the residential side, it's either your personal residence, it doesn't, well, let me back up. It doesn't have to be your personal residence, but it has to be a dwelling. You could install them and take the credits on a vacation, I guess, that's what I would say.
Yeah, and so I think just this workshop, we decided to focus only on residential and on commercial and ag, because we thought that was the biggest market. I think a future workshop will be precisely in this nonprofit arena. I think the simplest way to go about this would be for a church or any other nonprofit entity to enter into a third-party power purchase agreement. The Iowa Supreme Court made those agreements a legal option in the state of Iowa, but that was only very recently, this June or July. And basically, a third party owns the panels. They install them at your nonprofit entity. They put the power in behind your meter, so they're not using the utilities lines to transfer power to you. And they sell the power to you under terms that you negotiate. And you can either agree with them or disagree with them. And you either accept the terms or walk away from them. The third-party power purchase agreement has been a very important model in other states, but it's only getting some traction now in the state of Iowa. And the Supreme Court case really dealt only with a nonprofit entity. And so I think the safest bet for a third-party power purchase agreement is with a nonprofit entity. But now the problem is, who's the third party that you're going to do business with?
The minister.
And what was that?
The minister.
Oh, the minister. Well, maybe we have wealthy ministers, but I know Novak Electric in town is interested in developing third-party power purchase agreements. And so I don't know if Russell is here. I know John is here, and if you're prepared to talk about that, you can. But I don't want to steal thunder from the primary focus here, which is the agricultural and commercial. I'll just say that Luther College is currently exploring a significant third-party power purchase agreement on a significant system.
So just, since it is so specific, if you would maybe talk to Dennis Potrans, because Ramunji, Shoka Weinkauf is working on this specific thing right now. So that would be someone to talk to about the ongoing process.
Right, and our office is involved and aware of that. Yeah, we are.
Couldn't you also get around the profitability question by doing a sweetheart deal? In other words, having a separate holding company own the real estate and have the nonprofit lease the entire real estate property?
Potentially. I mean,
If the nonprofit was willing to give me a rent or other owner.
right. Yeah, that's, I mean, but yes, you
That would
could.
work.
So in the nonprofit world, what he's talking about is kind of moving the real estate out to a different company and paying some rent.
And that way whatever entity owns the building is going to be able to put in the solar and still make a profit because they're getting all the rental income instead of just running the other company the panels.
What else? Any question? I mean,
Yeah, other questions you have for Glenn?
Maybe I can further muddy the waters on the difference between a residential and a commercial. Are rental properties eligible for this at all, and what about like if you were a landlord at a? I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. If you're a landlord, can you do this for the benefit of your client? And assuming that they're going to reimburse you for that, so you're eligible to take the tax credits on a building
Okay,
you own,
so
regardless if you're.
rental properties are eligible, they get the commercial credit. Now, some of the stuff that you would read says, oh, if you have a rental property, you can't do it, but they are talking about claiming the residential credit. But it's actually two different laws.
So you could take the commercial, potentially at least, but it sounds.
Potentially. Now, the downfall that we have seen with with rental properties is that typically rental properties do not show a lot of current profit. Again, no tax. So are you going to benefit from all of that now?
But if you were a large enough landlord, you could probably float the tax for
Yes.
one project.
Yes. And I have a client that their rental, they have what we were just talking about. They have a holding company that has all their real estate throughout 2 or 3 states, and it's an operating business. The holding company did the solar projects. And so with credit, I mean but that works fine. We have plenty of profit in that. So yes, if you were a landlord, you could.
Depends on your cost of electricity coming in too. I mean, you're gonna offset it. If you're paying 6.5 cents versus 12 or 13 cents. How are you gonna make profit on rental property if it's only 6 cents, 6.5 cents coming in?
Correct. Probably the best rental property to do it on is where you own the rental property and lease it to your operating business. But again, you gotta be able to pay significant rent to generate some profit.
You know, in a farm rental situation is a prime example where you have excess, you have plenty of income. You've got a farm unit that you're renting.
Yeah, you really probably, in that, don't you really have to get that grain site in there? I mean,
Right,
otherwise
absolutely,
you
you
don't
have
have
the building
much-
and the land.
Otherwise, you don't have a ton of
As a unit.
use. Yeah, yeah. But that would be where you land and grain site all.
Yeah.
So is that considered passive income?
Yeah. So, yeah, let me kind of define some of that. So one of the hurdles with the rental versus the operating business, and we get into this with leasing panels versus selling power, is that anything leasing or rental, the IRS generally says it's passive. And when somebody says, oh, I have a passive activity, without going into a whole bunch of detail, if I have a passive loss, it's not currently deductible, but if I have passive income, I have to pick it up. And that's about as cut to the chase as I can say it. It's really a lot more complicated than that because we get into hours and how much time you spend doing what. But generally that passive thing comes in to be the problem with the rental.
Which is like renter income.
Yeah, all rental income is passive by tax law, just period. There's no, the only rental income that's not passive, and I don't even know if you call it rental, is like a hotel where your, average stay is less than 30 days. They say, hey, that's not rental, that's actually trader business. Go ahead. I'm just gonna say the passive thing, it is a really big hurdle in some of these things. That's where you really gotta get to your tax preparer. Trying at 10:30, but I'll be around or whatever.
Other questions for Kelly? He's here now and won't be shortly, so this is your chance.
I got time.
Okay, let me just say a couple of things here. Only so much we can do in a limited amount of time, but how many of you have a solar system already on a building or farm business? Okay. How many of you are considering adding a system? How many of you are customers of Alliant Energy? And how many of you are customers of Hawkeye REC? And is anybody a customer of a different REC?
Mid-America.
Mid-American, okay, great. And
Postville.
Postville, is that a municipal utility? Yes? Or is it an REC? Excuse me. Okay. So, ideally, we would have representatives from these utilities here as well to talk with you. And I'm not an expert on this by any means, but I know something. And so, if you are a customer of Alliant Energy, you can utilize a net metering provision, which in Iowa is capped at 500 kW of capacity. Now 500 kW of capacity is probably, I don't know, maybe $1 million project, something like that, or a $1.25 million project. I doubt anybody here is going to do that. And so if you're an Alliant Energy customer, you can put in a system that produces over the course of a year as much electricity as you tend to consume as a business or as a farm, and you can apply that. So when your system is producing more power during the day than your farm can consume, then the electrons flow into the grid and feed people around you. And at night, when the sun's not shining, you draw on your banked electrons. It literally turns your meter backwards, and you can tap it that way. Now, why do I bring that up? Just because you're paying for your system at a retail rate, and that's a wonderful opportunity to have. If you're a customer of Hawkeye REC, I believe system sizes are capped at 30 kW. Does anybody know? 40 kW? Thank you. Thank you. And they have a slightly different way of doing net metering. You still pay for your power as it comes in, but then they buy your power from your up to 40 kW system at the same, as I understand it, rate that you're paying for at your farm. So 40 kW, figure $3 a watt installed is $120,000. Might be a little more, maybe for only a 40 kW system. But I don't know, that's what these vendors are here to crunch numbers for. And depending on your orientation and production, you should be able to get a significant amount of kilowatt hours out of that. But you want to be aware of those two sorts of limits. I don't know about Postville and whether the Postville REC offers a net metering thing. They do, thank you, John. Not every REC or municipal utility, well, they are under no obligation to offer you net metering, but customers of Mid-American and Alliant are required to do so. There's an interconnection process that you have to go through, but obviously the financial part of it is critical. So I just thought I'd mention that. The third-party power purchase agreement is just getting off the ground in the state of Iowa. We don't really have any companies from outside of the state coming in to try to do business yet. Perhaps that's because of this 2016, end of 2016, when the federal tax credit drops from 30% to 10, and maybe they just don't want to invest that energy. But that's creating an opportunity for local businesses to form a third-party power purchase approach to financing these systems. And the attractiveness of that is there's no capital required on your end. You're just paying them for the power. That's it. Of course, it depends on how much they're going to charge you for the power and all of that, but that's, at least in our experience, as we're looking at it, it's a very attractive proposition. So anyway, be aware of that, and as I said, to my knowledge, Russell Novak Electric is, or Perry Novak Electric is the only entity in Decorah right now that is offering a third-party power, or is interested in exploring third-party power purchase agreements.
I think we'd all be interested in it. I mean, just to be fair.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. And all I'm saying is that's the only one in town that I know of. And so Eagle Point Solar in Dubuque is the entity that kind of got this ball rolling and took the case to the Iowa Utilities Board and to the Iowa Supreme Court. So there may be other players in the field. Yeah, I certainly don't mean to privilege Novak at all. But anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that. So other questions for Kelly now? Otherwise, we'll move over.
Like this net metering with Alliant RECs, has it been consistent, or is there a pretty good chance that they may change the rules as we get in a year or 2 years or 5 years down the road?
To my knowledge, there hasn't been any change in the net metering rules since the rules were adopted several years ago. The Iowa Utilities Board does have what's called a docket that's open right now for public comment. The Iowa Utilities Board poses a series of questions, and any citizen of the state of Iowa that wants to participate, and people outside of Iowa can participate in it. And they're exploring what's called distributed generation. Is it possible that the net metering limit might change from 500 and get knocked down? Maybe. Is it possible that rates might change where you don't necessarily get to net meter 100%? That's possible, but right now hasn't happened. Other states are starting to slap fixed rates onto net metering customers, which will discourage investment in PV. But it's just too soon to know exactly what's going to happen. And my guess is there will be a grandfather provision for those that came in under the, you made your financing arrangement under one set of terms, and I would be surprised if whatever changes are imposed on people retroactively. Hard to know. I am happy to talk more about this. Joel?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that just in following news in other states, the fights have been over whether or not utilities are going to stop offering that to new customers. They may, or slap some charges on, but I haven't heard of anything, even anywhere in the US, where you basically have got the rug pulled out from underneath you at your net metering agreement.
In fairness to the state of Iowa, we've been quite progressive in comparison to many other states. And we have a Republican governor and a Republican House, and yet we have very, we just increased the solar tax credit in the state of Iowa. Our Iowa Utilities Board is engaging in these sorts of questions about the city generation, but we're not seeing knee-jerk reaction, throw everything out. Those of you that have a system with Alliant and got your rebate, that was because the Iowa Utilities Board approved that rebate provision several years ago. That would be nice if they had retained it and we were going forward with it, but things have changed a lot in the solar industry as well. Prices have dropped.
Does Mid-America pay you the same that you pay them?
Mid-American is under the same, as an investor-owned utility, under the same obligation to net meter your system for you at whatever retail rate you pay, up to 500 kW. Yep.
There's no incentive for them to do that.
No, there's a federal law that requires
I
them
know,
to do it.
that's what I mean.
That's the big one.
We just went live this week with our solar project with Hawkeye REC, and I think the agreement is they buy back at their cost. Excess is, they'll give you credit for their cost of production, which is 4.5 cents.
That's at the end of the year, as I understand it, maybe, but I could be wrong.
That was my understanding, but
I thought it was, what it cost them to produce it.
Yeah, they're
They've got all
avoiding
the
costs.
infrastructure to move it around.
If you have remaining credits after 12 months.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Right, so the way this works is if you consume 10,000 kilowatt hours in a year, you buy that amount from them, and your system produces 11,000, then at the end of the year, they're gonna allow you to get 1,000 kilowatt hours at their avoided cost rate, which is probably somewhere around 3 cents per kilowatt hour. But the other 10,000 kilowatt hours, they're gonna pay you at the rate that you're buying power from them for. But if you're a customer of Alliant Energy, every kilowatt hour you produce is credited to your account at the retail rate. The difference is that currently, at the end of the year, they roll that balance over. That's something that might change. They may do exactly what Hawkeye's doing and say, well, no, we're not going to let you carry it forward. But the Iowa Utility Board, over the course of their history, has made decisions that have led them to keep carrying this credit forward beyond a period of time. But I think that's possible. That's something that could change.
But it's a useless credit if you can't use that much electricity.
Exactly, and so that's why it's important to size your systems in an optimal way to, as best you can, anticipate how much your consumption is going to be. But if you're going to buy an electric car, well, then you might want to add another 2.5 kW per car per year to power. So, something to think about if you think you might go over to that. But, where we live right now, I think electric cars are pretty hard to justify. The limited range makes it hard. But a plug-in electric hybrid, that's a different story. Any other questions for Kelly before he goes to coach his kids' basketball game?
Just a question to clarify. Purchase of the system, you've got a 5-year depreciation period, and you reduce your purchase price by the federal credit, or 1/2 of the
Half of the federal credit. Half of the federal credit.
Okay.
And Kelly, you